I sure hope this sound records. Otherwise, this will be really awkward having to dub over everything. So right now, let's look at our function. So what I'd like you guys to do right now in your journal is just write this function down. And I'm going to put pi over 4 x plus 3 pi over 4 plus a 2. All right. So what we're going to do right now, guys, is we're going to take this and we're going to graph it, but I'm going to show you guys also how to find different values. So let's take a look at this, and right now let's see if we can identify A, B, C, and D. Now we're using this form, all right? Since we're dealing with the sine of x function, I want you guys to put A sine open parentheses bx minus c, and I'm just going to put plus d over there. So we can clearly see our a value. Our a value is what number? The number 4. We can clearly see our d value. That's the number 2. And we can clearly see our b value, which is pi over 4. Where students mess up is right here. They'll see that as a positive, but I do not see that as a positive. I see it as a negative 3 pi over 4, because when you plug that in, if you were to plug that in, that makes it a positive, because a negative times a negative is a positive. So those are all the values. Okay. So right now, one thing I want you to imagine when you're doing this is I want you to imagine where is your midline going to be. So if I said, what's our midline? What would we say? Yeah, our midline is going to be at y equals 2. That's our midline. What's our amplitude? Yep, amplitude is 4. Okay. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky. We got to find, like, what's the length of our period? So how do we find the length of our period? We know it's 2 pi over the what? Over the b value. So 2 pi over our value of b, which is pi over 4. So how do I find the length of my period? What am I going to have to do to the numerator and the denominator? Multiply it by its, right, its reciprocal. Very good. So 4 over pi and 4 over pi. So that what it happens, that all these cancel out. This pi cancels out this pi. And so what would be the length of our period in this particular case? The length of our period is going to be 8 units. So when we graph this, we should see a length of 8 units, and that's what I'm going to check to make sure I'm graphing it correctly. All right. All right. So now the next thing, our period is 8 units. What's the last thing we kind of have to worry about? Our phase shift, right? So how do we find our phase shift? The formula for our phase shift is the c value divided by the b value. So we're going to take c divided by b. So what is our c value? We said our c value was negative 3 pi over 4, and our b value is pi over 4. You're like, what in the world would I have to do to simplify that? Same thing, right? The reciprocal. Okay, so we have a reciprocal. So what happens here? Those cancel out. These pi's cancel out. These 4's cancel out. So what does it look like my phase shift is going to be equal to at the very, 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 very end? Minus what? Minus 3. What does that mean? Like 3 units to the left of the y axis. Okay. So we have a phase shift of what? Negative 3. We've got a period of 8. Or we got a midline at 2. So help me out here. Hopefully you guys have written this down. Okay. This is how you would do it if you didn't have like a graphing calculator. Like how would you graph it without So what we're going to do is we're going to try to graph it. So can you guys see how this is a sine of x graph? Like it starts here, okay? So what I want you to do though is if you have a cosine, switch the dots. Then you can move this and make it look like a cosine graph. All right? If you have a sine of x graph, just keep it where it was. So right now, what's our phase from 0, 0? Hold on. From 0, 0, what's our phase shift? What do we say our phase shift was? So watch this. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. Where was our midline? Midline was at 2. All right. So we're going to move up 2. I got to move this up though. Hold on. Up 2. Okay. All right. What's our amplitude? 4, right? So we got this has to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. But here's the thing. What's the length of our period? 8. So here's what I need you guys to understand. From here, it's got to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I literally have to finish it right there. Let's see here. No. 1 second here. Let me see if I got here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Oh, I got to move it over a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What I'm trying to do is I want you guys to visualize it goes up and down and back up. Can you guys see the midline? What I'm talking about? There's the midline. This is what I'm trying to help you guys visualize. Okay. So here it went, there's my amplitude, right? There's my amplitude, it's 4. My period goes over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? So that's how you could do it by hand, but I'm not expecting you to have to know how to do all of that. Okay? What we're going to do is now we're just going to type it into Desmos and see if we got it right. So how about this? Give me some ordered pairs that you think are on our graph. What's one of our ordered pairs right there? Yeah, -3 and 2. What's an ordered pair right there? 1 and 2. And what's our ordered pair right there? All right. What? 5 and 2, right? 5 and 2. So we're going to type it into Desmos. Check it out. See if it works. So help me out here when I go to Desmos. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and click this guy right here. Put y equals, and we had 4 sine. Now you're going to have to help me out here because whatever you wrote down, help me out. When I say help me out, like what's okay? Pi over 4. Pi divided by 4. Then it was an x. Then it was what? Plus, was it 3 pi over 4? Okay, like that. And then plus 2. Now, here's the thing. See that little gear? Or there's not gear, the wrench. Make sure you have it radians. Okay? And always, trust me, you're always going to want to do this. In Desmos, always put your midline in because that helps you figure out if you graphed it correctly. So see these points right here? There's your points that you can use, and it always is helpful if you just make sure you write in the midline. Then you can use those points. Now I feel a lot better. Like I did it by hand, but now I feel a lot better that I'm checking my work through Desmos. All right. So right now, did I have it at a 1 and a 6? Oh, wrong one. Sorry, -1, 6. Yes. All right. Then we just hit check. Woohoo! I'm not expecting you to do everything by hand, okay, right now. But I am expecting you to be able to type into Desmos, type in what? Make sure you type in the equation correctly, make sure you put the midline and graph it correctly, okay? All right, so on this one, I'm not going to go everything by hand. I'm just going to go over one more of how to do it. Is every single one of these graphing, or do you have to interpret it? Okay, I'm going to get to the interpret one. So let's just go ahead and quickly do this one so I can get to the interpreting one. So help me out. Could you guys write this down for me so that you're going to help me write it in? I'm just going to put a half. Okay, minus a 5. So there we go. Let's go to Desmos. All right, so our midline this time was negative 5, I believe. All right, so I'm just going to put up y minus 5. I always put my midline in. Then, help me out. Go ahead, tell me. 2 cosine. Is that half? Is that right? Or 0.5 or half? X, okay. Minus. All right, so we got minus a quarter, right? And is it a pi? Pi, so we put a little pi right there. And then we put what, minus 5? Okay, right there. Now, I want to show you guys something. It's kind of cool. Go to the little wrench, the graph settings, and we're actually going to change this from regular integers to terms of pi. So here's what I want you. We're going to go from negative 5 pi to positive 5 pi in the graph settings. It makes it a lot easier. Check this out. So right here, you see where I have the x's? I'm going to delete. I'm going to put negative 5 pi to positive 5 pi. Okay. Then for the step right here, for the step, let's go ahead and do pi. So it's going up and back by pi. It makes it a heck of a lot easier. So check this out now. Look what all of your answers are now in terms of. They're all in terms of what? Pi. They're all in terms of pi. So if you're all in terms of pi, what you can do is now you can kind of figure out where you're going to put your points. So let's think of this. I'm going to put a point at right here. I'm going to take a screenshot real quick. I'm going to use this point, pi over 2, negative 3, and then I'm going to use, maybe I'll use this point, or I could use this point. All right, so we're going to try pi over 2, negative 3. So I'm going to go over here. Oh, it's a cosine graph. So what do I have to do with the widget tools? With the cosine graph, I have to what? Move it. I got to switch it. So now I can move it around and make it look like a cosine graph. So can everybody see how this is pi? So this would be pi over 2. And our midline is what? Negative 5. So I'll move my 1 down to negative 5. So we have pi over 2, negative 3. There's pi over 2, negative 3. And then what was the other? 3 pi over 2, negative 5. So 3 pi over 2 is right in between, right there. So I'm going to take a little screenshot of this. There's my point. What's that point? Pi over 2, comma, negative 3. And that point right there is 3 pi over 2, comma, negative 5. And as long as I have those correct points, that allows me to plot things correctly. All right? All right, so pi over 2, negative 3, 3 pi over 2, negative 5. I feel pretty good about this. Nailed it. Okay, so now this is where you guys need a little bit of help. So right now, what I'd like you guys to do is I would like you guys to simply put this point in your journal and this point in your journal. We'll show you guys how to build an equation just from those 2 points. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video to give them a chance to catch. All right, so this is what I want you guys to visualize. I want you guys to visualize this as a cosine graph right there. Why am I saying cosine? Because it tells us right here the form they want us to be in. Okay? So check this out. When we look at this, can everybody visualize where the midline is going to be? Can you guys kind of see it's going to be right down the middle? How do we find the midline if we have the highest point and the lowest point? What do we do? Yeah, so we take the 11, right? We add these together, all right, and we divide it by, so we take the maximum, we add the minimum, and we divide by 2. Oh, I put the answer there, sorry. Which equals a 6. So what does that tell us about that kind of gives us the easiest one, right? We got to find A, got to find B, got to find C, got to find D. So we found D really quickly. So how do we find, this is the D value, that's the D value. How do we find the amplitude? Yeah, from the midline up or from the midline down. So you can kind of visualize it. So what would you guys say the amplitude is from the midline up or from the midline down? 5? Well, I agree. So the amplitude is 5. Now, how could you do it mathematically, like if you didn't visualize it? All right, here's what you do. You take the maximum, you take away the minimum. So 11 minus 1, and then you take that and divide it by 2. So that gives you what? 10 over 2, which still gets you to that's how you do it just algebraically, all right? You take the maximum minus the minimum. So now we know our A value is 5. Now, why is it 5 and not a negative 5? Because this is it's a positive cosine graph. It goes down and goes back up. All right, so now 2 things. What do we got to find? The B and yeah, the B and the C. Now listen, what does B deal with? What's it connected to? The length of the period, right? So here's what I want you guys to do. B will always equal 2 pi divided by the length of the period. So look at our period, guys. It starts here, and where does it end? It ends right there. I don't know if you guys can see that, but how many units is that? All right. So we're going from a 2, right, over to a 5. I don't know. Yeah. So we got 1 space, 2 space, 3 space, right? So our length of our period is 3 units. So guys, just put 2 pi divided by the length of our period, which is 3. And what does that equal? That equals our B value, which is 2 pi over 3. Here's the trickiest part. How do we find C? What's C connected to? The phase shift. Does anybody know what the phase shift is? Because I need to know the phase shift. So let's take a look at it. What would you guys say has happened to this graph? Normally, where does the cosine graph start? It normally starts right there, but it's been moved to the right how many units? 2. So I'm going to say the phase shift is plus 2. So can you guys write this down, please? The phase shift is 2 units. Now, if it's to the right, then you know your phase shift is positive, okay? If it goes to the left, you say your phase shift is negative. So we're going to put 2 units right. So if it's 2 units right, the number is just 2. Now, that's not the C value. The C value, all right? Remember, the phase shift is what? C over B. That's the phase shift. So if C over B equals the phase shift, what is our phase shift? 2. So you put C over B equals 2 over 1. This is the method to find the C value. Do we know the B value? What is our B value? 2 pi over 3. So watch this, ready? C over the B value, which is 2 pi over 3. What is that equal to? That's equal to 2 over 1. Look at it carefully. C over B equals 2 over 1. What is our B value? Our B value is 2 pi over 3. So what do we have to do a little bit? Just a little tiny bit of what? cross multiplication. So what is our C value actually equal to? 2 times 2 pi over 3, which is 4 pi over 3. So let me quickly go over the process that I do. Step 1, what do I always do? Find the D value. Step 2, what do I find? The A value. Step 3, what do I find? The B value, because I need the B value in order to find my C value. So now I'm going to put right here 4 pi over 3. Now we're going to bring it all together. All right? Trust me, it goes a lot faster when you're not teaching it. Like when I'm doing it, it just goes so much faster. But you need to know the process. All right? So maybe instead of putting check marks, maybe I should put like that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4. Like that's the order that I find them before I put it all together. Now, remember, this is not a sign. I'm not interpreting it as a sine of x graph. I'm interpreting it as a cosine of x graph. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to put y equals. I'm going to put 5. I'm going to put cosine. I'm going to open up the parentheses. My b value is 2 pi over 3. I'm going to put an x next to it. Don't forget the x. All right, I'm going to put minus. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to put minus 4 pi over 3. Why am I putting minus? Because we moved to the right. We didn't go to the left. If we move to the left, then now I'd put a plus sign. Okay? And then the last but not least, put plus a 6. So if you write this down in your journal, so help me type it in so you can see if we got it right. Okay? Now, how could you check to see if you got it right? You could literally type it into Desmos and see if it has a what? A 2 and an 11 and a 3.5 and a 1. So if you wanted, like, I'm kind of worried, what do I want you to be able to do? I want you guys to go to Desmos. All right. Ours was what? It was a 5, I believe. And what was our B value? Was it 2 pi over 3? 2 pi divided by 3. All right. And then this was it 3 pi? 4 pi over 3? Okay, 4. Pi, I'll put divided by 3. And then that was a plus 6, I believe. Plus 6. And then our midline was also at a 6. So you're like, wow, that's just so much going on. I mean, that's so much going on. But look at, what does that say? 211. What does that say? 3.51. So that makes me feel really good about my answer now, because when I go back to there's the 211, there's the 3.51. So now I got to go over here and I got to type it in. Sorry, I'm going to have to go over to my computer. All right, let's see here. What do we got right there? It was 5, right? And then we had cosine. And then I'm going to do an open parentheses. And we have a little fraction. And it was a 2. Put a pi. Where's the pi? Oh, there's a pi. Right here, put a 3. Then I got to go right arrow minus. Make another fraction. 4 pi over 3. Right arrow. And it was a plus 6, I believe, correct? I think that's it. Let me make sure, because I don't want to get it wrong. I hate it when I get it wrong. Oh, good. Thank you. Forgot to put a what? That would have been bad. X right there. That would have been bad, because we got to put the X right there. Thank you. I think that's it. All right. Nailed it. Woohoo. All right. You guys can go ahead and you guys go ahead and start working if you want. I'm going to do one more, all right, to finish the video out. Okay. So you guys don't have to pay attention to me in class. Right now, I'm going to interpret this as a sine of x graph. Here's why, because it tells me to. Okay. Now this one goes up and goes back down and then goes back up and it stops right there. So here's what I'm doing in my head. I'm imagining there's the start, there's the finish, there's my midline. I can clearly see the midline. So I'm going to do one more, show you how fast you can do it without having to do a whole bunch of work. I'm going to find my A value, my B value, my C value, and my D value. So my D value looks like it goes right there through -8. So I'm going to put -8. We have the A value, which it looks like it goes from -8 to a -1.5. So I got to find the distance between -1.5 and a -8. I got to find that gap. So I'm going to say that gap between those two numbers is a 6 point, it's like a 6.5 gap. So I'm going to put A is 6.5, because if I add 6.5 to 1.5, I get 8. So that's my gap. That's my A value. All right. So now I got to find the length of my period. Start here, and it finishes right over here. All right. So and it has a point right there. Whoa. Has a point right there. Don't know why it's doing that. So stop doing that. There we go. Okay. So check this out. Can everybody see how that is a quarter of the way across? So I went from a what? A -pi all the way over to pi. Don't know why it keeps doing that. Over 4. So I got to find the gap between those. All right. Well, the gap between -pi and 0 is pi. And the gap between 0, put like a 0. And the gap between 0 and pi over 4 is just pi over 4. So if I do 4 pi over 4 and I add a pi over 4, that little tiny gap is 5 pi over 4. That's the gap between this point and this point with the x is 5 pi over 4. And I've only gone a quarter of the way there. So if I only gone a quarter of the way there, I got to multiply that by 4. So my period, guys, my period is 5 pi. You're like, what does that mean? If you get a period of 5 pi, how do you find your b value? 2 pi over the period of 5 pi equals the b value. So now I know my b value is 2/5. Okay, so my b value is 2/5. Now I just got to look at my c value. Well, it looks like I shifted over right there. I can see the phase shift. My phase shift is literally -pi. That's where it's starting. So my phase shift is -pi. So my phase shift is -pi. What's the formula for phase shift? Formula for phase shift is C over B. So if C over B equals -pi over 1, I don't know my C value, but I do know my B value. My B value is 2/5. So C over 2/5 equals -pi over 1. Once again, I do my little cross multiplication right here, cross multiply, and my C value is going to equal -2 pi over 5. That's my C value. -2 pi over 5. So I'm going to go ahead and build my function, then I'm going to type it into Desmos, make sure I didn't make any silly mistakes, and I'll be done. Y equals my A value, which is 6.5, times the sine of my B value, which is 2/5 of x plus 2 pi over 5 minus 8. So that's what I got to type into Desmos to check it out. Okay. All right, let's see if I got it right here. Before I type it in, let's go to Desmos. That's got to be a 6.5. Got to change that from a sine, so a cosine to a sine. go. What else do I got to do? I got to change that to 2/5. Take away that pi, put that as a 5. Then I got 2 pi over 5. Put that as a 2. Put that as a 5. And last but not least, put a -8. -8. Make sure I put y equals -8. Scroll down. Got to take a look at some points here. Right there. Wait a second, hold on. Looks like I messed up somewhere. Hold on. Oh, plus. That's where I put. I messed up. Plus. Oh, that's much better. Yay. Ah, that's what I was looking for right there. That negative pi over 8. And then I was looking for, please, yes. So guys, here's what I want you guys to understand. When you're using Desmos, so everybody, back to the attention up here on the board. If you're using Desmos and you're trying to get everything in terms of pi, make sure in your little section right here for the graph settings that you keep your steps in terms of pi. If you keep your steps in terms of pi, then you can check your answers. All right. So I feel a lot better. That everything works out nice and neat. Now I'll just type that in and I'll be done. I'll help everybody in my class. All right. I wish I could just copy and paste, but apparently you can't. All right. So I'm going to do 6.5. I'm going to type in sine and then open parentheses. And what is it? 2 over 5x. 2 over 5x plus, that's where I messed up on the first one, plus 2 pi over 5. I see the hand. I'll read right there. 2 pi right there over 5. Okay. And then we had a plus. So wait, we didn't have a plus, we have minus. -8, yeah. -8. All right, 6.5. Hopefully I typed everything in right. Woohoo! Yay me. Have a good day.